Light rain fell on the sidewalk in front of Seoul Memorial Hospital. Dozens to hundreds of Jungkook's fans had gathered, waiting for news of their idol who was reportedly being treated there. Banners reading "Get well soon, Jungkook" were scattered among the crowd, while some fans brought flowers, gifts, and even candles in support. But despite waiting for hours, there was no sign of the star. No photos, no official statements to reassure, just a suspicious silence. A young woman, Hanyul, stood in the middle of the crowd with a worried face. She had been a longtime Jungkook fan and could not contain her anxiety. "Why can't anyone see Jungkook?" she muttered, her eyes still on the towering hospital building. Suddenly, a doctor emerged from the main door of the hospital, a middle-aged man in a white coat and a serious expression. He climbed up to the makeshift podium that had been prepared by security and took the microphone. "Thank you all for your concern," he said in a calm but firm voice. "We understand your concerns about Jungkook's condition, but there are a few things we need to clarify." The crowd immediately fell silent, except for the sound of the rain and the camera phones that continued to record. Jungkook was indeed rushed to this hospital due to severe exhaustion. "Our medical team has given the best treatment," explained the doctor, Dr. Park Hyun-sia. "However, something happened, something we cannot explain." The crowd began to whisper. The atmosphere became more tense. "What happened, Doc?" asked a reporter who was covering the incident. Dr. Park took a deep breath. "Since Jungkook entered the treatment room, there have been strange events that we have experienced. CCTV footage shows that he was actually taken into the hospital's VIP room. However, a few hours later, when our nurse came in to do an examination, the room was empty. Jungkook was gone." Cries of surprise were heard from the fans. Some cried, while others tried to understand what the doctor had just said. "We have checked all the CCTV footage, and what is even stranger, there is not a single footage that shows him leaving the room. It was as if he had simply disappeared." Silence hung in the air. No one knew what to say. How could someone disappear from a closed room without a trace? A fan shouted, "Could this be someone else's doing? Or did someone kidnap him?" "We are conducting further investigations with the authorities," Dr. Park replied, "but we definitely can't give you a definite answer right now." Hanyul, who had been quiet the entire time, felt something was amiss. She was a forensic science student and was used to analyzing evidence. There was no way someone could disappear without a trace unless something really strange happened. She turned to her friend Ji-hoon, who was also a huge BTS fan. "I have a bad feeling about this," she whispered. "It's like they're hiding something." Ji-hoon nodded. "We have to find out more. I can't believe Jungkook just disappeared like that." Meanwhile, inside the hospital, several doctors and nurses were talking in low voices. One of the nurses, Minji, looked pale. She bit her lip, looking like she wanted to say something but was hesitant. "What did you see earlier, Minji?" one of her colleagues asked. Minji swallowed. "I'm not sure, but before Jungkook disappeared, I saw something in the room. Like a black shadow. It was only for a moment, but it felt like something was watching him." Her colleague looked at her with a horrified expression. "A black shadow? What do you mean?" Minji shook her head. "I don't know, but after that, I went out to get some medicine, and when I came back, he was gone." Meanwhile, outside the hospital, the rain was getting heavier. The fans remained in place, refusing to leave until they got more answers. But one thing was for sure. Jungkook disappeared under very strange circumstances, and no one knew where he went or what exactly happened to him. Night had turned to early morning, but dozens of fans were still sitting outside the hospital. Some brought thin blankets, others wore hooded hoodies, trying to ward off the cold autumn wind that blew hard. They remained there, reluctant to move, even though their bodies were starting to feel stiff after hours of waiting. Among the crowd, a girl named Hannah sat hugging her knees. The purple jacket she was wearing was already wet in several parts because of the drizzle earlier. She stared at her cell phone, the screen showing a photo of Jungkook with his trademark bright smile. "He must be fine," she muttered, more to herself. Beside her, Rena, a friend she knew from the fan community, heaved a long sigh. "It's been more than 6 hours. Why is there no news?" Hannah just shook her head, biting her lip to hold back her anxiety. News of Jungkook's accident spread quickly this afternoon. The car he was driving collided with a truck at an intersection near the studio. Several witnesses said that he was conscious before being taken to the hospital. But after that, there was no more definite news. They only know that he was undergoing surgery. Around them, other fans were also constantly checking social media, hoping for an official statement from management. However, so far, there was only speculation and prayers pouring in the comments section. In another corner, a man named Jay stood with his hands in his pockets, staring at the towering hospital building. He was not the type to join in on a crowd like this, but Jungkook was someone he greatly admired. Jungkook's songs and hard work had helped him through difficult times in his life. Unconsciously, Jay began humming the song Still With You. His soft voice was heard by several other fans, and one by one, they joined in. Within minutes, the singing filled the night air, a reminder that they were all here for the same person. Behind the window of the 7th floor of the hospital, a nurse walking down the corridor paused for a moment. She looked outside, watching a group of people singing silently, their faces full of hope and anxiety. She smiled faintly, then continued on her way to the operating room. In front of the ICU door, the medical staff were still on guard. Jungkook's manager, a middle-aged man with a tired face, sat on the bench in the waiting room. He had spent hours calling family, colleagues, and management, making sure everything was going according to procedure. Suddenly, the door to the operating room opened. A doctor walked out with calm steps. "How is he?" The manager's voice sounded hoarse from too much talking and lack of rest. The doctor took off his gloves, then smiled faintly. The surgery was successful. There are no life-threatening injuries. He will be fine. The manager nodded, rubbing his face in relief. Thank goodness. Not long after, he left the hospital, meeting the fans who were still faithfully waiting. As soon as his figure appeared under the streetlights, the crowd immediately fell silent, holding their breath, waiting for the news they had been hoping for. The manager looked around, seeing the hopeful eyes in front of him. Then, with a slightly trembling voice, he said, "Jungkook is safe." The surgery was successful. For a moment, silence enveloped the atmosphere. Then, like a tidal wave, the sound of crying and sobbing erupted among the fans. Some people immediately hugged each other. Others just covered their faces, trying to absorb the good news. Hannah lowered her head, warm tears streaming down her cheeks. Rina held her hand tightly, as if to make sure that this was not a dream. In another corner, Jay let out a long breath, placing his hand on his chest. He felt the heavy burden that had been pressing on him for so long had finally been lifted. In the ICU room, Jungkook was still lying in peace. The medical machines were beeping softly. His heartbeat was stable. His eyes were still closed. And outside, hundreds of people were waiting for him to wake up. And when that happened, they would still be here waiting for him, as they always had.